Welcome to the world. Welcome to my underground production studio at 704 Victoria Road, Nanaimo, BC. You see, I'm being completely transparent with you as to my whereabouts. My intelligence can be found and can be destroyed therein. However, that said, at that risk, I am willing to be in the world along the path of fearlessness with myself, with you, with the universe, and perhaps all kinds of other aspects and beings and things that I don't even know to describe. So, in that humbleness and in that arrogance at the same time, I will proceed with a very short video here on Stone Teachings number 2. And what am I calling it? Taking children to, talking to children, of course, is important, taking children to the dump. So part of the Stone Teachings, you can check my first video out. I'll put a link below. Stone Teachings 1, taking children to the edge. So as well as the edge, and I talk about all the importance of why edges are so critical to our awareness of difference and confrontation with the other. And often that is confrontation with the other being, fear of the other on a massive scale, incorporated and inculcated into us and in our everyday normal living. That becomes a coming to the edge or the marginal or the other as the abject, a word that has all kinds of very interesting meanings, and I'm not interested in doing the whole philosophical theoretical unfolding of that work. You can read that in many sources right now. But in my own work, I'm interested as an artist, as an educator or researcher, in this project I'm doing, which is taking children to the edge of a dump. Yeah. Um, Many don't know that as I'm working on this residency at Nanaimo Innovation Academy, which I've talked about in my other videos recently, is that as an artist, when I came to this new city, Nanaimo, one of the things I noticed in just going walking around is the amount of dump dumps. Everything from that which comes from obviously garbage in the ordinary sense for most of us, um, to actual dump sites or waste sites or these accumulated places that one can find walking down the trail and along a beautiful ravine in town. And suddenly you see places where people, probably homeless people, have camped and or people just have left amounts of garbage, refuse, waste. And the things that most caught my attention, as these are not anything new to me in my life. I've been well aware of noticing how humans treat their garbage, but I've really been interested to watch and observe closely my own affect, my deep emotions, in other words, my whole body reaction to walking along a lovely nature trail, being all excited about, isn't this a great place to walk, and I can get away from the traffic and having to look at houses and all the busyness of human culture, is in that so-called retreat space that I'm attempting to find sanctity and harmony and all these wonderful things. I confront and I come into an encounter event with one of these dump sites. And again, these are obviously not official, they're not legal, they are just dump sites. And what I noticed is I don't want to look too closely. That's really, folks, the key part of this teaching is when we have an encounter with the world. This is the living world. And some part of me wants to abject it, right? To push it off, to not look too closely at the details of what's done there, at the whole scene. I want to move on. I want to get away from. I don't want to smell the smells that are probably going to come from that place. I don't want to see the syringes. I don't want to see the opened cans of food, incomplete. I don't want to see the piles of shit where people just go and dump their waste. No. Uh, but that disturbed me, right? So that's the whole point of being an artist, is being honest with what's going on. That's part of being a philosopher, which I am as well, is that if anytime I'm avoiding something, the abject, I'm keeping a projected wall in my imagination because it's not real. The wall doesn't exist. The fact is you're going to encounter these things if you open your eyes and walk outside of your comfort zone of your nice, clean, sanitized, clinicized world. Well, that if we keep doing that, walking away, closing our eyes, moving into this kind of hypnotic state of thinking that we can create this really beautiful, safe world for our children, etc., free from all those risks and disasters, more or less, if that becomes, what the culture of fear is teaching everybody, which it is. That's a disturbing way to live, and that's not an authentic way to live. So that's my whole point of this artist residency and my talk this morning is, how do we walk to those, not just the edges of the world that we live in, the edges that are dangerous, but we walk into something that's not overtly dangerous, but it's a dump. So take children to the dump. My advice for all teachers, educators today. Yeah, kindergarten, ECS, toddlers. Where are you doing your field trips? Yeah, look around. Look what's on your curriculum. Where are you taking them? All nice places? Probably. Okay, well, okay, you can have some nice field trips, but I'd like to see 50% of the field trips in your curriculum focused on taking children to the edges and taking them to dumps. Dumps of various kinds. To witness, that's the purpose. And first, to witness, to observe, right, through that witnessing, our judgmentalness about someone else and their processes of struggles in living and how they dump their distress in the world and show that dumping of what was dumped onto them, probably in many ways, as garbage, as crap, as shit, as distress, as hurt, as violence, unfortunately, tragedy, and their dumped on their head, so to speak, in their heart, leaves them with little compassion, little room for sensitivity to what they dump and leave behind in excess in their worlds, which for the rest of us tends to be the object. We don't want to see it. Well, I learned that in this reflecting upon my object reaction to these piles of dump, that I better work on that directly as an artist at this point in my life, any point of life. And so that's what I'm doing. And so the eventual project as an art project, an aesthetic project, really, an aesthetic education project is, why do we resist disgust and move away from certain kinds of forms of being or signs, right? Signs, tracks, crap left over from other beings. In this case, human beings, but of course it could be animals. They leave their dumps as well in certain ways. So I'm interested in going to these dump sites, and not just human dump sites. Again, that would be interesting to explore other kinds of dump sites that other creatures on this planet leave and signify a certain kind of place. So I'm interested in these places, right? Place-based education, situated learning, constructivist learning. In these sites, how do children make sense? How do we make sense as adults? And how do children make sense of how adults make sense of the world? In other words, just even the questions and inquiry around a dump site that children find, go, oh, there's a dump site. Oh, there's a dump site. Well, we ought to really be helping children recognize and you have a vocabulary, even a rich vocabulary, aesthetically and artistically and philosophically. Yeah, 3-year-olds, if not earlier, to recognize a dump site, to recognize it as a point of inquiry, as to the human condition, as to beyond the human condition, an earthly condition. Gaia herself dumps waste. Oh yeah, the Big Bang itself, creation in a way, is a dump. Think of the Big Bang, right? 20 billion years ago, whatever. A huge dump of very concentrated, intense matter and energy that at some point, best we can know of, explodes and expands throughout the universe as a huge dump site. It's dumping all this matter, energy, heat, and other kinds of waves that go and accumulate in all parts of the universe and expanding universe. Well, not too many people are writing books about very romantic about the universe for the most part, but really it's a huge dump. Okay, so that's why in rationale, if I had to and was pushed to write a grant and perhaps get funded for what I do, I did this art project on bringing in half load dump truck, nice, full of these stones that I purchased at a store, outdoor store, that has all these materials that they sell. Everything from loam to sawdust to gravel, which is fractured rock, fractured stones. And the particular one that I ordered was, it's called clear fracture stones. And that is a particular make of stones from the local mountains here in this region. So again, local connection to the matter, the materials, the minerals, and that's part of creation and from the dump of creation in a way. But now is another dump, right? Because they fractured all these mountain stones for various interests and capitalistic projects to leave behind these stones that we put on our driveways, our walkways, etc. And that was where I started seeing the connection between, or right around the house where I moved in here the very first day in the renting here in Nanaimo, I saw these stones that had been dumped, called a landscaping stone is gravel, to keep weeds down, to look nice, but be tough. And very cheap and inexpensive to purchase as well as fill. See, all these things started to connect with me, and I said, when I started seeing these garbage dumps, these waste sites, as I said, in the forest and other places in town, many of them, and disturbing me, I started thinking, well, why don't I get disturbed about these stones that have been dumped here? Well, because they're kind of organized and they're not regularly seen as pollution like these other dump sites I was describing. But nonetheless, they were created by a very violent process of blowing up Mother Earth, quite unsacredly, of course, for the purpose of sales, money. And you can add greed and all other kinds of things, but whatever the violence, the dumping continues, and humanity, consciousness itself, as I am attempting to bring to awareness of itself. That's what this art project about is. I'm working about in many ways, other things, but that's a key part of it. So if you have other interests and questions about my work and this artist residency of the sacred dump, because we did a ceremony with the dump truck, I think I may have mentioned it in another video, or I've been writing about it. I can't really remember now what's what, but at some point I will be presenting, a slideshow presentation on this entire art project, and I'll present it in many different formats in media. But pleased to announce that Lakehead University has a program. I'm working with an artist there, Dr. Pauline Samashina, and she will be curating an exhibit on my work and many other artists who are working on the theme around global warming and in general around sustainability and ecological issues, very contemporary issue. And that will be with her support. Thank you very much, Pauline. That the show and my deeper thoughts, right? This kind of spiral of circling of thoughts that I've shared with the video today and some of the previous videos, if you look at my YouTube channel, on what I'm trying to do in education as well as art, as well as awareness to the kind of world that we live in the future, and really answer the question that a 3-year-old asked me when I was on the residency in the daycare in the Nanaimo Innovation Academy the other day. I'm laying out some stones from this stone pile and didn't say anything. A couple of kids were coming over and repeating what I was doing and making up some of their own um, formations with these stones, just ordinary looking stone. Remember, these are not fancy, although kids really like the white ones, the crystals that I added, the white stones. Again, coming from bedding materials and landscaping, but I added them into the dump truck of these other gravel stones just for interest. And sure enough, one of the 3-year-olds came over and had this very sort of stern, curious look and stood back from watching me and some of the other children, engaging in the activity of creating with these stones. And in this fascinating moment, just said, "What are you doing?" Whoa, that just went through me. Yeah, gotta breathe in that one. And I just thought, isn't that what it's all about? And I talked about earlier in this video, sense making, right? Children making sense, senses making sense of the world itself, and then children making sense of how adults are making sense. And how is all this related to these dumped stones? Out in the edge of the parking lot, on the edge of the property, in the border space of the community around Nanaimo Academy, Innovation Academy, and the actual fenced in area where the daycare center is, the National Innovation Academy. So I'm playing in this interesting borderland frontera zone, the frontier. And it's an edgy place. It's a risk place. Teachers can't just bring out their students, daycare center kids, children, the people, out to see my art, you know, sculpture I'm doing with the dump stones or other things I'm doing with the stones out there. At this point, they can't bring them out without doing a safety check of the whole area from the moment they leave the fence gate and walk down, 75 meters to where I'm working on the edge of the property. They have to do a whole safety check for syringes, glass, broken glass, other things that might infect them, cut them, harm them. Never mind the kinds of people that might be around camping or walking by, walking schizophrenics, talking to themselves out loud and yelling and shouting and other kinds of things going on, or drug deals being made right in the area. We're in the urban core here where this daycare center school is, but it's a beautiful facility and well managed, and it's been going for almost 5 years now and starting kindergarten this year. And that's what I'm working as an artist in residency there and as an educational consultant in an informal way with them. And it's going to be a very interesting collaboration. Again, the children being involved in all of these projects that I've just talked about. But that's what I was thinking about today, is wanted to share and encourage taking children to the dump. And that could be any kind of refuse dump. It could be even one of these places that, brings in these stones and other materials and loads them onto trucks, and then people purchase them for their gardens and landscaping. Good for children to see all of this. I mean, directly see what's going on, see where the recycling facility is in your town and the kinds of people that show up to drop off their stuff is one thing. That's a story itself. Who's getting money from bottles and collecting, and of course, most of those people, most are doing it almost as a livelihood, secondary or tertiary livelihood of just trying to have enough money for the day or enough money to get their next fix. We don't know. They're doing all kinds of things, but you see them in the carts going up and down the street in front of our place all the time. And you see them same ways where the daycare center is. There's many people out there collecting and wandering the streets and so on. Recycle centers, dumps, real city dumps, example, etc., is another place. The wastewater treatment center, etc. Children need to be, according to the Stone teachings, they need to be at the dump. So I welcome you to, if you're in Nanaimo, come and see the Stone dump at least that I'm working on right now, and encourage everybody to get out and check out these places, right? These and see when you don't want to watch, see what you don't want to look at, and ask yourself: is that what you want to teach your children? Is to not look at those things? We create this fear of those places that we don't want to see. That I do not want to keep, passing on myself as a human being today, and I prefer if parents, caregivers, and others do not pass on that trait of the abject and the burying and the walling and the gated communities that don't want to look at what's in the world around you. That's very real, and it's messy and it's dirty. And how to engage that, right, in a beautiful way, in a sacred way, respectful way. And, you know, yeah, maybe there's solutions, but we have to look first. We have to become aware. We have to innovate from there. Thanks for listening today.